Hey, what's up, guys? Did you hear the story about the woman who wanted to know if her 3 future sons-in-law would be trustworthy? She decides to take them one by one on a walk and pretend to slip and fall into the water and see what they would do. So on the first walk, when she falls into the water, the first boy jumps in and saves her. So the next day, there's a new BMW parked in front of the house with a note that said, "Thank you for saving me. Here's your new car. Signed, your mother-in-law." The next day, she goes on the same walk with her second future son-in-law and again pretends to fall into the water, and he immediately jumps in after her. And so the next day, there's a new Mercedes parked in front of the house with a note that says, "Thank you for saving me. Here's your new car. Signed, your mother-in-law." And the next day, she goes out with her third future son-in-law, falls into the water, but this time the boy looks to the left, looks to the right, and he sees nobody. So he just continues to walk by and leaves her to drown. So the next day, there's a brand new Ferrari parked in front of the house with a note that said, "Thank you for saving me. Here's your new car. Signed, your father-in-law." Okay, so if you've been watching closely, you've noticed that the Sunday videos this month have been about various aspects of goals. So this week, to wrap up our mini-series on goals, I want to talk about completing the past and looking to the future. For many people, the past events in their lives are full of supporting evidence for limiting beliefs, especially if past events that were negative or didn't go exactly as planned. Now, I'm sure you'll agree that everything that went down in 2020 has the potential to generate a ton of limiting beliefs for basically anyone who goes looking for them. For example, on a coaching call last week, I spoke with an agent who was getting tired of hearing other agents bitch about there being no listings. So the agent I was working with wanted to make sure she didn't allow herself to join everyone else in beating the drum of there aren't any listings. So we went through an exercise to help her complete the past and not get stuck by that or any other issue from last year. Now, you may have heard somewhere along the line the US military uses a process developed in the 80s called after-action review, where after an operation, they study what they hoped would happen, acknowledge what actually happened, and then extract lessons from what went wrong as they identify how they could improve in the future. So I've also heard this called backwards thinking, and I used to do it all the time when I would pull away from listing appointments. I'd stop around the corner, and while it was fresh on my mind, I'd go through a similar analysis. I mean, I don't remember calling it an after-action review or like post-listing appointment review. I was most likely just following the guidance of my mentor at the time. So I can imagine the idea of looking back on past events, especially those that failed, can seem like something that you'd want to avoid. I mean, better to just put it out of your mind and not dwell on the negative, right? But looking back on the past has important benefits if it's done through the correct lens. Looking backwards is how we anchor lessons. So a coach or a teacher can make you aware of something, but to truly learn it, you have to go do it. And the best opportunity to internalize a lesson is on the other side of a failure. So through this lens, looking back on a failure isn't so bad at all because you're extracting all of the benefits. And this is so important, you guys, to remember because we rarely get new things right the first time. My mentor used to ask me how many times I was going to make the same mistake before I would just go do what he taught me. And my answer was jokingly about 7. I mean, I guess I really wanted to learn all I could from some of those mistakes. But eventually, when you've learned from past experience, you get the opportunity to turn the lens forward and look at your future with new energy and new confidence. And this is where you can assign meaning to the past and move forward fearlessly. But the key to doing this is to focus on your future self. You see, for many people, the best way to predict future behavior is to look at their past. When we don't complete the past, the energy of past events drags on with us into the future, and we find ourselves in comfort zones, which our brain loves because they keep us safe. So recently, I've come to understand that what most people call their personality is actually their comfort zone. In fact, there's lots of new research showing the danger of personality typing. You know, like the DISC profile or Myers-Briggs. Those methodologies do nothing but argue for a person's limitations. I mean, if you've ever taken one of those tests and agreed with the result, it's likely because the report showed what you were already comfortable with. Get it? See, your personality is how you show up in the world, and it's based on past events, but it's not permanent like those tests want you to believe. Think about who you were as an individual 10 years ago. Is it anything like you are today? Of course not. And who you are going to be 10 years from now won't be anything like you are today. So completing the past helps you learn lessons and let go of events so that you can turn your focus forward and identify who you will be in the future. Because your identity is just the story that you tell about yourself. So wouldn't you rather tell yourself a powerful story looking forward? Well, you can't do that if you don't wrap up the past, or if you insist you'll always be a high I, or whatever, and use that as your catch-all excuse. No, you have to wrap up the past and then identify, or tell yourself a new story for your future identity, your future self. Remember, your current personality is your comfort zone. So if you tell yourself a new story about your identity, your behavior will eventually change, and you'll arrive at your future self with a new personality. And then you repeat the growth process all over again. So let's go back to my coaching call. The agents bitching to my client about low inventory wasn't the real focus of that call. It was the trigger for us to think bigger and move beyond that energy and look at all the events that needed to be wrapped up from 2020. So to end our month of discussions on goals, I want you to think about what you may need to wrap up from last year so that you don't end up this spring wondering why you've gotten so far off track. And to help, I've created a journal prompt for you to download. So just hit the link in the post below and use it to help you through the same process I use and that I used with my coaching client. So next week, you guys, we're gonna switch topics. Can you guess what it'll be about? It might have something to do with a book called The Top Producer Life, but I guess you'll have to come back to see. All right, you guys, thanks for watching this week. Life is good. It's gonna be a fun week, so let's get out there and live a top producer life.